The earth trembles beneath the bare feet of the sovereign army. But it is not the anger of the gods moving the stones. The Egyptian shield wall holds its collective breath, 1,000 chests rising and falling as one in the suffocating absolute heat of the deep delta noon. Sweat cuts jagged, stinging rivers through the thick, pale dust, caking the faces of men who have only ever fought on foot, locked eye to eye, moving in the slow, brutal, rhythmic dance of their ancestors. They stare in paralyzed unison into the blinding, anamorphic haze of the eastern horizon. The vast, sun-baked expanse of the surrounding desert has always been their eternal fortress, a divine and impassable barrier, forged by the deities to keep the fragile order of the world safe from the encroaching darkness. They wait for an enemy that walks. But out of the swirling gold, a shadow emerges that does not march. It does not walk with the heavy, exhausted trudge of mortal infantry. It flies upon a terrifying symphony of screaming wood and thundering hooves, a violently kinetic silhouette tearing through the volumetric god rays of the midday sun. It is a biomechanical nightmare, a fusion of beast and timber that defies every sacred law of the natural world. The great silence of Ma'at is broken forever. Chaos has learned to ride. To be a soldier of the Middle Kingdom is to be a living pillar of the divine order. They stand shoulder to shoulder, a dense, static formation of flesh and copper, holding heavy cowhide shields that threaten to drag their exhausted shoulders into the shifting golden sands. The beaten copper spear tips, forged in the fires of a civilization that believed itself untouchable, grow searingly hot under the unyielding, oppressive glare of Ra. For centuries, the absolute truth of the universe was simple and unshakable. Egypt was the center of creation, a sanctuary of balance surrounded by an ocean of barren death. The desert was an anvil upon which any invading army would be slowly, mercilessly crushed by thirst and exhaustion long before they ever saw the fertile green of the sacred river. But the gods of the foreigners do not respect the geography of the divine. They have dragged the abyss across the burning dunes. The air is utterly choked with desaturated ochre and pulverized dust, a suffocating atmosphere that tastes of copper and dread. The infantrymen swallow dryly, their throats parched, their knuckles turning stark white around the wooden shafts of their spears. They are trapped in a frozen, claustrophobic dread, anchored to the bedrock while the horizon itself seems to accelerate toward them with impossible, sacrilegious velocity. As the violent sandstorm draws closer, the horrifying anatomy of the impending slaughter reveals itself through the chaotic chiaroscuro of the dust. These are not merely men running to battle. They are towering alien beasts, their muscular chests slick with lather, their massive hooves striking the earth with a concussive force that shatters the bedrock. The Egyptian foot soldier, kneeling in the dirt, is forced to look up into the terrifying height of an animal he barely recognizes. It is the physical invasion of Isfet, the absolute manifestation of ruin. Behind the snorting, wild-eyed beasts rolls an engine of geometric malice. The spoked wheels, crafted from steam-bent ash and imported timber, blur into transparent discs of pure kinetic energy. The chariot is a masterpiece of lethal engineering, a lightweight, floating platform that allows the Hyksos warriors to glide over the jagged desert floor with the terrifying smoothness of a predatory serpent upon the water. Our copper is too heavy, our legs are too slow, we are already dead. The physical toll of the waiting is an agony far worse than the bite of a blade. The unrelenting heat boils the fluid in their eyes, blurring their vision just as the thundering roar of the charge reaches a crescendo that threatens to burst their eardrums. Every instinct ingrained in the human animal screams at them to break the line, to drop the suffocating weight of the cowhide, to turn and flee into the blinding dunes. But there is nowhere to run when the wind itself is armed. Before a single Egyptian spear can be thrown, before the gap between the armies is even closed, the stagnant air is violently torn open. It is an abomination of a sound, a sharp alien crack of horn, wood, and dried sinew snapping forward with a mechanical brutality that the ancient gods of the Nile never prophesied. It is the sound of stored, lethal tension releasing its wrath upon the unsuspecting. Shadow falls over the kneeling phalanx as a rain of armor-piercing brands eclipses the unyielding sun. The arrows do not arc with the lazy, predictable trajectory of a simple wooden bow. They strike with the flat, grinding velocity of a thunderbolt. The first rank of the shield wall collapses inward, their heavy cowhide defenses easily punctured by the overwhelming kinetic force of the composite weaponry. Deep crimson blood erupts, staining the desaturated ochre dust with the vibrant color of immediate, irreversible mortality. The line fractures. The unbroken chain of the ancestors snaps in the dark. And then, the heavy chariots crash into the fragile human barricade. It is a moment of pure, blinding catastrophe captured in horrifying slow motion. The massive, iron-hard hooves of the war horses trample the copper spears into splintered uselessness, crushing the chests of the men who had sworn to hold the desert. The mechanical wheels grind over bone and shield alike, kicking up massive, swirling clouds of blood-soaked sand that choke the dying. The sky darkens with their dust. The gods are screaming in the void. The Hyksos warlords, elevated upon their wooden thrones of slaughter, look down upon the broken remnants of the sovereign army with cold, calculating detachment. They do not fight with anger. They fight with the clinical precision of a superior machine, dismantling an obsolete monument. Volumetric rays of sunlight pierce through the swirling devastation, illuminating the exact, terrifying moment a civilization realizes its invincibility was nothing more than a comforting illusion. The era of the foot soldier is buried beneath the grinding wheel. Every desperate thrust of an Egyptian spear is easily sidestepped by the nimble, pivoting chariots. The enemy is everywhere and nowhere, a ghostly apparition of speed and violence that strikes, retreats, and circles back before the heavy infantry can even turn their massive shields. The claustrophobic dread of the static formation has transformed into a chaotic, swirling abattoir, where the only certainty is the inexorable approach of the next bronze-tipped arrow. The camera pulls back, ripping through the veil of millennia. The blinding haze of the ancient battle, the chaotic chiaroscuro of blood and swirling dust, dissolves into the quiet, faded reality of the modern Nile Delta. We are no longer standing in a theater of catastrophic slaughter. We are standing among the wind-scoured, half-buried ruins of Avaris, the stronghold where the Hyksos eventually ruled, now nothing more than jagged scars etched deeply into the unforgiving bedrock. The screaming horses are gone. The bronze has corroded into green memory. The oppressive, suffocating weight of the ancient administration, the crushing psychological burden of maintaining the divine order, has been entirely swept away by the slow, grinding friction of the centuries. The broken pottery shards and the oxidized arrowheads, buried beneath layers of agricultural sediment, are the only remaining testaments to the day the eternal fortress of the desert was violently, permanently breached. The dust settles, covering both the conqueror and the conquered in absolute equality. The tragedy of the Middle Kingdom was not a failure of courage, nor was it a lack of devotion to the sacred rituals of their ancestors. It was the tragic, universal failure of imagination. The fatal assumption that the walls of the present will forever protect us from the violent, unpredictable innovations of the future. They built a society of unyielding stone, only to be dismantled by an enemy built of speed and wood. No empire is eternal when the winds of chaos learn to change their shape. As the sun sets over the silent ruins, casting long, melancholic shadows across the delta, we are reminded of the crushing weight of history. The illusion of safety is the most dangerous myth a civilization can tell itself. For out there, beyond the borders of our understanding, in the blinding haze of the unexplored horizon, a new wheel is always turning.